Mr. Gaynor, welcome. Thank you for your work, and thank you for your efforts as we responded to the earthquake in Alaska the end of November. I appreciate your willingness to really drop everything that you were doing and be there with us in the aftermath of that trauma. As you know, we're still dealing with that trauma in many ways. It was the disaster that happened and then was frozen in place. I was home over the weekend, and spring thaw is starting to come, and people are now seeing damage that they were not able to see prior to because we just had so much snow that was on the ground. And so that is adding to, I think, the continuing stress of dealing with this particular disaster. I want to speak to what we're seeing with some of the frustration from folks as they deal with not only the FEMA and the assistance programs, but the state and the individual assistance program there. Individual assistance program there at FEMA, of course, is $34,000, but many Alaskans have come to understand that what they're seeing from the FEMA inspectors is a relatively low award. They're told that they can appeal, but frankly, they won't even know how their grant was calculated unless they take the initiative of asking for the inspector's report from FEMA by calling some call center that we're not really quite sure where that is. But we, of course, in our office get all of the calls coming in and individuals that are upset or frustrated. We have been talking with one individual whose estimate for repairs are between $220,000 and $400,000, which is far more than his current mortgage. He initially received $2,337 from FEMA. After 2 appeals, he's now received $6,000 total in FEMA aid. Another individual, initial estimates to repair total $83,000. He originally received just shy of $3,000 from FEMA, and after appealing, he received an additional $1,900. What they're saying is, look, I'm not asking for FEMA to repay the cost of my home. We know that. We know that FEMA is not designed to make you whole, and they're not seeking that. They're not asking for a Cadillac here, but they're asking for the ability to have it restored to safe and habitable condition. I met just yesterday with the representative from the state emergency management directors who are here in town. So I visited with him, and we had an opportunity to discuss this. And what he was sharing with me was an analogy, was that if, for instance, a plate glass window is broken by an earthquake, FEMA won't pay to replace the window, they'll pay to board it up. And if a foundation is severely damaged, FEMA will give the homeowner some epoxy glue to help fill the crack, but not provide the homeowner with a grant to have the home jacked up and have that foundation properly repaired in accordance with code and standards. And I think it's fair to say that most Alaskans they didn't anticipate this. Again, they didn't anticipate that they were going to be made whole, but it is a question of what is kind of rational or reasonable in terms of expectations. And we've been working hard to try to manage expectations here, but I will tell you, part of the problem is that it seems that this individual assistance program has kind of a black box reputation. Nobody really knows what is eligible for a home repair award. Nobody knows whether inspectors are consistent. The specific criteria that inspectors use isn't readily available. Appeal decisions aren't published. You indicate in your testimony, which I appreciate, that you're seeking to reduce the complexity of FEMA, to promote simpler, less complex processes, to streamline it. That's good, but how do we let folks know that disaster victims can have confidence in this program that is being administered, and is it being administered as we intended it to? Help me out with this. as it relates to what Alaskans are dealing with right now.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I've had this exact conversation with Senator Sullivan last week, so I'm well aware of some of the issues that you outlined. You know, you said all the right words. This does not make you whole. FEMA is really a bridge from, the disaster to something what we like to call is warm, safe, and secure, or sanitary and secure. And our goal is to make sure we deliver the maximum benefit to all survivors. That is our goal. And I can't argue with you. Sometimes it is complex and confusing. I want to thank the state of Alaska for having their own individual assistance program. I think that's a wonderful program. Not all states have that. Those two programs, similar in some cases and dissimilar in others, and so we're trying to work through how we complement each other as we work towards solutions.
Well, and I would like to explore that later with you. We obviously don't have time at this hearing, but that is something where there has been this general sense that Alaska is one of the few states that does have a state individual assistance program, that we're actually penalized for it. And that because there is that offset from the state individual assistance that may come to that homeowner, you then have you have a system that doesn't seem to mesh together. And in fact, it not only doesn't mesh together, but again, some feel that we're penalized for trying to be prepared and resilient on our own. So much of what I have heard is this great frustration that you can't access a level of the federal resource unless you have moved first on the state side, and then that contradicts itself by saying, well, you can't even access anything on state side unless you have taken the steps to access the federal support. So there's a great deal of confusion. There's a sense that again, as a state who's tried to act independently, that we're somehow penalized. So I'm not quite sure how we move forward with this, but I don't want this disaster to get behind us and we get busy with everything that we're doing. We don't really work to better integrate this system, learn from the lessons that we have seen from this particular disaster, and then the next one comes and other folks in another part of the country are equally frustrated because we haven't worked to streamline that.
Yes, ma'am. Since my phone call with Senator Sullivan last week, we've actually taken a deep dive into some of these issues that you've raised down to the individual level. We've reviewed some of them, and this is really our first time with liquefaction issues, especially in Alaska and frozen ground. So there's some things that it looked like when we looked at it, and then obviously, as the ground thaws, it looks a lot different. So we realized that we have some a learning level on this that we have to get our heads around. So we're going to make some adjustments to the program to make sure, again, we deliver the maximum disaster relief to survivors. So you have my commitment that we are going to try to simplify and make this less complex so we can deliver that disaster assistance to Alaskans that need it.
Well, I appreciate your commitment to that. I would ask that you work with us and the state's team. I think we have learned a great deal about this, and we can serve as a little bit of an expert. So don't work to address this in isolation, but let's be cooperating on this. I do appreciate that the extension of time for which to file has been extended.
Yes, ma'am.
I think that was an important recognition of the fact that we do have some very unique issues. Again, when a disaster has basically been frozen in place and then has impact months later, we cannot just cut off and say if it wasn't apparent on November 30th, it doesn't exist, because that is not our reality. So thank you for working with us on that. I have a whole series of questions that I'll submit for the record. Some of them are questions that we've been asked to submit by the municipality of Anchorage. They go into some detail, specifically as to whether or not earthquake insurance may be treated the same way as flood insurance. Not that I look at the flood insurance program as a model of efficiency and something that works, but I think these are areas of questions that are worthwhile for us. I also want to note that I'm looking at the budget request that includes funding for the state of Hawaii for FEMA's stock target for food, recognizing that while Alaska is not an island, we are much in the same situation, and would hope that we'd also be seeing an opportunity to address food issues in the event of emergency in a stockpiled area in Alaska as well.
Yes, ma'am. We do have a plan for Alaska warehousing, so.
Yes, we understand that. We look forward to that.